Talk 1240.
It's something that drives me really crazy that I've just learned to observe, I guess, in news. As a news person myself, I sort of start seeing things now that I didn't really notice before in news broadcasts. So I guess when you listen to Digital Drive, you get sort of a candid look at news broadcasting and just how bad it is, really, because it kind of really is in a lot of cases where there's so much editorializing in the news nowadays, where it's not like the news anymore. It's here's my editorial on what I think about crap you don't care about, or crap I think you should care about. It never fails. You watch cable news and it's always an opinion show. Like, when's the last time you turned on cable news and you didn't hear somebody's opinion about something? Probably 20 years or so, I would hazard a guess. Especially, and I'm not going to name names, but especially if you watch one of the most popular cable news stations in the world right now, chances are you're going to get a panel of hosts, right, who spout their opinions about stuff, and you really don't actually get the real story. You just get one side's opinion and then the other side's opinion with a very controlled opposition about some topical thing. And that's it. That's the news now. That's not the news, though. That's an opinion show. That's not unbiased factual reporting. That's just, here's what I think about what's happening. Now at 11, a gay wedding cake that was not made for a veteran of Afghanistan and Vietnam. It's like, who cares, man? It's just like all these little petty issues we keep bringing up that are not actually worth hearing about half the time. At least not worth hearing about beyond the local news. Local news has sort of an allowance for, I don't know, silly is the word, but an allowance for stories that aren't really that important on a national scale, but are kind of important to us on a local scale. Like, the gay wedding cake thing. Yeah, that could have been a local story, but making it a national issue seems kind of out of place, right? Like, you have stories about the Iran nuclear deal, also gay wedding cake. And it's like, what? Yeah, who cares, man? It just seems kind of, I don't know, out there, I guess is the word. It's just like, it's a distraction. It's meant to be a distraction anyway. It's just so out there that it makes no sense whatsoever. And then they have on the people who are supposed to be like expert witnesses or whatever. They'll bring in a guy who has 20 years of experience with being a neocon, and they'll take him on as their opinion host guy who will talk about this particular issue. Okay, as an example, right now, all the news stations are talking about the Iran nuclear deal. So who do we have on to talk about the Iran nuclear deal but Mr. Warhawk himself, Lindsey Graham, right? Like, what do you think he's going to say, right? Like, this is not anything new we're going to hear out of Lindsey Graham. He's going to say exactly what we all expect him to say because he's been saying exactly the same thing for the last, 15, 20 years, however long he's been in office. Way too long, I would say. However long he's been in office in South Carolina, which is way too long, to be quite frank with you. It's been way too long. It seems like half of these senators have been in office for way too long, and they're so jaded that they don't actually know what goes on in the real world. Kind of like, as an example, and I don't want to get too political because this is not a political show, at least not directly. It is indirectly. I sort of trick you into listening to my political diatribe, but when it comes right down to it, it's not an overall political show. The thing is, though, Jeb Bush is so out of it. He just doesn't know what's happening, and it's really funny. Half of these political candidates just don't know what's happening. And one thing that I thought was really funny is how he says, well, people should just work longer hours. Like, yeah, the American worker actually is really lazy, I suppose. So we should just work longer hours. And then Hillary Clinton comes out with a rebuttal saying, no, not longer hours, higher wages. Well, the thing is, they're both wrong. It's not like, well, it's one or the other, because it's really not. The problem is inflation. Like, how could it not be? Really, at this point, why is it that the dollar I have now is worth basically zilch? Why can't I buy anything for $1? Why is pizza delivered to my house $20? Because I tipped $5. Why is that? Well, it's because of inflation. Plain and simple. Thanks, Federal Reserve. It's because of inflation. And of course, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, so nothing can really be done about it. If there's any sort of congressional control over the Fed, they would pull their hair out and run around like chickens with their heads cut off, and the economy would crash and yada, yada. At least that's what they would have us believe. So there's really no solving the problem. It just has to crash. That's it. That's the only solution, is a crash or a global crisis or whatever. That would be the only solution to the wage gap problem, to the dollar being worth nothing problem. That's the problem. See, nobody wants you to direct your anger towards the Federal Reserve, because if you do, then that's it. That's end game for them. If they get called out on their nonsense, then suddenly the whole system collapses, because if people stop having faith in the dollar, which I don't know why they haven't yet, then the whole thing just falls apart. The scaffold falls away and the statue with the clay feet collapses, because that's really what the Federal Reserve is. It's a giant idol or the dollar is a giant idol with clay feet that we all bow down to. And eventually we'll sort of realize, wait, the emperor has no clothes, and he'll just collapse. And I wish it would just happen already, really. But anyway, that's my take on that's my take on global politics for you, everybody. Well, the United States is kind of actually infamous for being a place where you have freedom, but not really. That's sort of the gist of it, really. You have freedom, but not really. At least you have freedoms which are recognized, but not really. If you try to exercise them, you'll get arrested. Well, you have freedom to come and go. At least you're supposed to. I can come and go from here to Canada as much as I want, right? I mean, I should be able to. I have done it before. I've gone there once, actually twice, and come back. That was the first time I went was actually before there was a whole you need a passport thing, which is the dumbest thing. And now you need a passport to get across to Canada. So I had to pay an extra like $50-something to get a passport so I can come and go as I will, which doesn't make any sense either. But anyway, so I go from Canada and come back, no hitches, no problems, smuggled a bunch of alcohol in, no problem. Just kidding. But it's so dumb that I need a passport anyway. Like, why do I need a passport to go to a foreign country that's bordering the northern border? Right? Like previously for the last 100 or so years, people have been coming and going like it's no problem. And now suddenly we need papers. Papers, please. Are you going to exercise your freedoms? Papers, please. Well, an Oscar award-winning Snowden documentarian has been detained 50 plus times in United States airports. What? Laura Poitras, according to Ars Technica, I hope I pronounced her name right. Pardon me, Miss Poitras, if I have messed up. Gained notoriety as the documentary filmmaker behind the 2014 award-winning movie Citizen 4, which is a film about the time that she and Glenn Greenwald spent with NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden. What's less known about Ms. Poitras is that from 2006 until 2012, she was stopped at the U.S. border every single time she entered the country. In all, she was stopped on more than 50 occasions. Poitras, who is a U.S. citizen, never got a satisfactory explanation as to why the detentions took place. So what do? Well, you file a Freedom of Information Act request, which is exactly what Ms. Poitras has done. She says that she's filing a suit as well to support less high-profile people who were subject to the same years of Kafkaesque harassment that she was. This simply should not be tolerated in a democracy, she said. We have a right to know how this system works and why we are targeted. Because that's something that people don't know, is that, or at least average people who are not targeted, I suppose, don't know. Fortunately, I'm not. I don't know why I'm not, but I'm not. I'm not targeted when I go across the border, perhaps because they don't know who I am yet. But when I come across the border, I have no problems. Hooray. But for now, anyway, probably I'll be labeled as a domestic terrorist at some point because I'm very much anti-Federal Reserve and very much anti-police state and police in general and all that sort of things. I'll probably get stopped at the border every single time I try to cross, but that hasn't happened yet. Well, anyway, higher profile people get stopped at the border and we don't know why. That's kind of the funny thing. We don't really know why because they say that for us to know why would be a breach of national security. So you cannot know why some people are stopped at the border and why some others are not. Like, seriously, you can't know that. Because if you did, that would be a breach of national security. At least so they claim. So it seems likely that Ms. Poitras' treatment had something to do with the provocative movies that she's made. Before she made Citizen 4, she made the 2006 movie called My Country, My Country, about an Iraqi doctor who spoke out against the U.S. occupation of Iraq. She also put together a 2010 movie about the Guantanamo prison and the interrogation of Osama bin Laden's former bodyguard. The government used its power to detain people at airports in the name of national security to target a journalist whose work was focused on the effects of the U.S. war on terror, said David Sobel, who is the Electronic Frontier Foundation senior counsel. And that's another thing, is the war on terror is such an open thing. It really is just an open-ended thing. War on terror. What even is that? Well, it's a war on terror. Right? I mean, you ask what is the war on terror, they say, well, it's a war on global terrorism. So, okay, how do you stop global terrorism? Well, we kill enough people, I guess, and it'll just sort of stop. Well, it doesn't really work that way. You can't kill an ideology by killing enough people, because if you kill more people, then the ideology really just becomes stronger. I mean, look at communism. You kill enough people, and the revolutionaries start to realize that, hey, this might be working because people are getting upset at us for having these ideologies. So it only goes stronger. Even look at the American Revolution, where they started killing off revolutionaries, and people realized, like, hey, this is a dangerous ideology, and the British government is quite afraid of this, so we'll just continue on. So killing people really doesn't solve any problems when it comes to ideology. You can't stop an ideology by killing people. It doesn't work. You just make the ideology stronger and you create martyrs, which is exactly what's happening now. And I really don't think that there's any interest in stopping global terrorism anyway, because it's a wonderful excuse to go to war with different countries so that the contractors can profit off of those wars. So I very much doubt that there's any real interest in stopping the war on terror. But anyway, the government used its power to detain people at the border. The detentions only stopped after Ms. Poitras spoke out about them in 2012. Mr. Greenwald, who wrote a popular column for Salon at the time, penned a story highlighting her treatment at the border, and a group of documentarians petitioned the government on her behalf. During her detentions, Poitras was falsely told that she had a criminal record and that she appeared on a security threat database and that she was on the government no-fly list. Her laptop, camera, phone, and notebooks were seized and copied. Poitras filed Freedom of Information Act requests last year, seeking answers about her 6 years of detentions, but got very little response, leading to this lawsuit. The FBI ignored her request for a year, and then in May said it had 6 pages of relevant documents. However, the FBI was withholding all 6 pages due to grand jury secrecy rules, the EFF said. Here's the thing about borders, though. They're kind of a joke. Borders in the United States and any country are just arbitrary lines that have been decided by diplomats anyway. But when it comes right down to it, here in the States, our border actually can't possibly be secured because it's not legal to do so anyway. Congress has power over naturalization, not immigration. That's a state problem. Now, if the states try to do something about it, chances are the feds will sue you, but that's just the name of the game anyway, right? That's just the name of the game. There's not really any stopping that. If the states really wanted to secure their borders, they would pretty much have to ignore all federal regulations and just go ahead and do it. But nobody has the nads to do that sort of thing, so that's very unlikely to happen. Caller, this is Hot News Talk Radio. You're on the air.
Hey, this is Tex. I'm giving a instant traffic report for you.
Great.
On the Ridge Cut going up. So the Ridge Cut going up, there is a stalled Army convoy in the middle lane. One of the Army convoy trucks has broke down, and they've got about 4 or 5 of them stacked up behind him right now. So cars are having to divert to either the inside or outside lane.
Well, that shows you the power of American engineering, I suppose. Where is this Army convoy broken down again? Give me the location.
Actually, on the Ridge Cut going up.
So that's on what, 20? What? That's not 24, is it?
24.
24. Okay.
It's 24. 24 eastbound.
24 eastbound going up. Thanks a lot. So that's Army convoy that stopped, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks a lot for your call. Give me an update, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot. So the problem here is, again, American engineering, and the convoy has broken down. It appears to be 24 eastbound going up on the Ridge Cut. There is a Army convoy that is stopped. We thank you very much for that traffic update. If you have any more traffic updates to give us, you can give us a call, 423-800-8949. That's 423-800-8949. If you yourself are stuck in traffic, we'd love to hear it. We'd like to have you let us know. You can call in anytime. And it's 423-800-8949 if you would like to give a traffic update. Now, the problem with the border, and this is kind of a weird sort of analogy, I suppose, or a weird sort of observation to make on a show about technology, but really it does have a connection. The border cannot possibly be secured because the authority doesn't exist to do it, and also because even if the states decided to give themselves the authority to do these things, or give itself the authority to do such a thing, the federal government would just sue them. So really the only solution would be for the states to declare themselves as independent and then secure its own border, right? But that's not going to happen. Unfortunately, that's very unlikely. And the feds have no real vested interest in securing the border anyway, so it's very unlikely that's going to happen, and that's just something that has to be dealt with. No amount of screaming and crying about that particular topic is going to solve much of anything, because again, Congress does not have any power over immigration, only naturalization. So there's not really anything that can be done about that. Now, the states technically could do something about that, but it's unlikely they would, because sheriffs won't do it because they don't know they can, and governors won't do anything about it because they don't know that they can. So it's very unlikely anything's going to happen about that. Now, the problem here, though, is that the border guards don't actually really have much of any authority. They can't really tell you to do anything. The only thing that keeps you in check when you're going through a border crossing is just your own goodwill and also traffic laws. Like, seriously, that's it. You don't have to say anything to a border guard. If they ask you, are you an American citizen, you don't actually have to answer that question. And if they ask you if they can search your car, you also don't have to give them permission to do so. So that, of course, makes them very upset when you do that, which I think is very funny, but you don't have to comply with anything they say. So it's kind of funny because it makes them very mad when you don't, but they don't seem to understand that they don't have any power. One time I saw a video, really cool video. It was this guy who was stopped at the border going into Mexico. And actually, he wasn't actually coming from Mexico into Mexico. He was at a state border, as in like Mississippi into Louisiana, or a border such as that one. No sense whatsoever why they stopped him. But again, it's within like 100 miles of the Mexico border, so they'll do random traffic stops. Well, he was given a random traffic stop, and the officer, I loosely say officer because he has no real authority, asked him if he knew that he didn't have the right to remain silent if he's not under arrest. That's not true. You have the Fifth Amendment right any time whatsoever. You don't have to tell anybody anything. So for some reason, when he invoked his Fifth Amendment, this particular border guard told him, "Oh, you're not under arrest, so you don't have the right to remain silent." It doesn't really work that way, buddy. So I hate to break it to you, but you have the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent at any point whenever you're talking to an officer of the law, so-called. So you don't really have to tell them anything at any point. Well, anyway, Firefox has blacklisted Flash Player due to an unpatched zero-day vulnerability. In fact, multiple ones of those. If you use Firefox like me, you might be familiar, or actually, if you use Firefox like you might be familiar with Flash's vulnerabilities, because Firefox really likes to remind you that it has vulnerabilities. Flash is kind of going out the window when it comes right down to it. If you're using Adobe Flash, get with the 21st century. We're all using HTML5 now for video. In fact, if you go on YouTube, and it may do this by default now, but if you go on YouTube, just go to youtube.com/HTML5. If you're watching YouTube on your computer, then you can opt into the HTML5 program so that you no longer have to use Flash to watch YouTube videos. And YouTube videos are extremely vulnerable, so I would recommend doing that immediately. Flash has a lot of vulnerabilities. It allows for code injection. It's just bad. You don't want to mess with Adobe Flash anymore. I'd recommend sticking with HTML5 for watching videos. There are even extensions for Firefox that'll make HTML5 videos default to HTML5, I suppose. So that's what I would recommend. Just go to youtube.com/HTML5, and then you can opt in. Well, meanwhile, over at Facebook, the company's new chief security officer has called for Adobe to announce an end-of-life date for Flash so that we can finally disentangle the dependencies and upgrade the whole ecosystem. And if two web giants weren't enough, Google recently announced that the next stable version of Chrome would intelligently block auto-playing Flash elements, because Flash is really just sticking in the craw of everyone now. At this point, Flash is outdated. It was cool when it came out, kind of, but now it's just useless. Flash is not really that great anymore. We have pretty much anything that you would ever need that Flash could do can now be done with HTML5. So Flash is on the out and out, thank goodness. Well, if you're wondering, there will in fact be Windows 10 PCs on July the 29th with the proposed release date of July 29th. Apparently, there will be Windows 10 hardware, OEM Windows 10 hardware, on store shelves in time for July 29th. Now, Bloomberg's Dina Bass said that Yusuf Mehdi was mistaken when he said that that would not happen. The software firm says that Lenovo, Dell, HP, and Acer should all have systems available on the day of release, Windows 10 July 29th. So Windows 10 July 29th release date is looming, and it appears that OEMs are now going to be releasing Windows 10 hardware to your local Best Buy, Walmart, what have you. So if you want to buy a Windows 10 laptop 0 day, you can. You want to buy a Windows 10 desktop same day, you can. July 29th is the release day. So very excited about that. Windows 10 appears to be good. We'll put it that way. Windows 10 appears to be rather good. It's definitely better than Windows 8 because nothing could be worse except for Vista. Not a fan of Windows 8.1 or 5 or Windows 8 Ultimate or anything like that. Windows 10 seems to be much, much better, even if it does have a funky-looking, goofy cartoon mouse cursor-looking thing. But oh well. You know, if you're looking to get a car, there's a car lot with top quality used cars that are $2,000 less sometimes than other lots. It's an unpretentious little car lot just east of Central High on Highway 58. Louis passes the savings on to you because he has low overhead, no staffing, does everything himself. That's Louis at Automax at 643-2886. Ask for Louis, 643-2886 at Automax. This is Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and we are everywhere. Go to hotnewstalkradio.com to listen live over the web, hotnewstalkradio.com.
This is a mob mode. This is a mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Hi, this is your computer speaking. I don't feel so well. It's like I've come down with a bug, and I'm getting slower.
Affordable Computers. We fix sick computers. Your hometown guys at Affordable Computers will repair your PC in half the time of the big boys at an affordable price. No tricks, no gimmicks, no computer speak technobabble. Just good, quick, and courteous affordable service and repairs. Want to affordably supercharge your PC? Affordable Computers on Highway 58. Affordable Computers hand builds all desktops in-house. If you're looking for a better-than-new refurb laptop, $150 will get you a Dell or another name brand at Affordable Computers. Affordable Computers, Highway 58, between Arby's and Taco Bell. Also Fort O, Battlefield Parkway, near Holcomb's. Affordable Computers, we service what we sell. Call 499-1975. That's 499-1975.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm feeling great. Supercharged.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
You feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducts. Call now.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. The president hailing the nuclear deal announced with Iran as one which will cut off every path Tehran has to a nuclear weapon. But some lawmakers are skeptical.
If, in fact, it's as bad a deal as I think it is at this moment, we'll do everything we can to stop it.
House Speaker John Boehner, Congress has 60 days to review it.
President Obama says the deal isn't built on trust, it's built on verification. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani says a new chapter has begun in his nation's relations with the world. Iran's foreign minister also praising the accord, adding the agreement isn't perfect, but it has helped end an unnecessary crisis.
Fox Radio's Jessica Gallagher. Flooding in eastern Kentucky, leaving one person dead, 7 unaccounted for. And Ariana Grande will not face criminal charges after the donut licking video, which brought 2 apologies from the singer, the owner of the store declining to press charges. Fox News, we report.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
It used to be that everybody had a landline. I mean, back in the day, everybody had a landline. Now, by landline, I mean a POTS phone. And no, I don't mean a weed phone. I mean a POTS phone. Plain old telephone system. That's what POTS means, P-O-T-S. And it used to be everybody had a POTS phone. In fact, that was the only kind of phone you could get. In the 1970s, 1980s, early 1990s, the only phone that you could get was a POTS phone. That's a P-O-T-S, plain old telephone system. You use the RJ11 type jack that you plugged into your phone, and that was it. And you got the familiar sound when you picked up the hook, and that was a POTS phone. Well, that's not so common anymore. In fact, landlines in general are not so common anymore, be they VoIP phones or be they POTS phones. Now, I would recommend always getting a POTS phone. I mean, if you have a house, you really should get a POTS phone. Why, you might be asking? Well, there are a lot of reasons. But the number one main reason is if you have a landline, which some don't anymore, if you do have a landline, it should be a POTS line because landlines that are VoIP lines tend to go out when the power goes out. Whereas a POTS phone doesn't actually, because POTS is on a different line than your power. So if the power goes out, you actually can draw DC power from a POTS line. Believe it or not, you can have a light LED lamp that's powered from POTS. And your phone will continue to work if it's an unpowered phone or powered from a source that is only the POTS line, which actually is kind of rare nowadays because a lot of phones, landline phones, require a DC jack to be plugged in. Really annoying. But if you have a regular old, rotary phone or one of the AT&T touch-tone phones, then you should have no problem if you have a POTS line. POTS lines are getting harder and harder to get, unfortunately. I think there actually are regulations that require carriers to give them out if you ask for them. I don't know about that specifically, but you can still get them. I know Ringgold Telephone Company will offer non-VoIP lines if you ask for them. EPB may as well, but I'm not sure. The infrastructure is really kind of legacy nowadays, despite the fact that most, if not all, phone systems are kind of based, at least landline systems are kind of based on POTS. It's kind of weird. We have a VoIP phone here at the studio. It's a VoIP phone. We pay like $10 a month for it, and it's not expensive. It's totally affordable. But it's a VoIP phone. So if the phone lines go down or if the power goes out, we don't have communications anymore, be they internet communications or be they telephone communications. We do have our cell phone still, obviously, but if the cell phone tower, say, coincidentally gets struck by lightning, that's a problem too. Cell phone towers are supposed to have battery backups, but they're questionably serviced, put it that way. If the power goes out, then your cell towers may as well go out. If you remember Hurricane Sandy, which you probably do, because if you're young enough to not remember Hurricane Sandy, then I don't know why you're listening. You should be in school or nap time or something. But if you remember Hurricane Sandy, then you may remember that a big old hurricane went right through New York City and caused some flooding and a lot of problems, actually. Well, there was a radio show, actually there still is a radio show on at the time called Off the Hook. A really good radio show, actually, that I listened to up in New York. I'm not from New York, but I listened to an audio stream from it from New York. And they had a problem with communications. Power was out in a lot of big chunks of New York City. And phone lines were down in a lot of big chunks of New York City. So your only option for internet and communications, anything, was cell communications. The problem was, though, the battery backups weren't actually properly serviced for those cell towers, and you had no communications whatsoever. You're basically, essentially, you're cut off. You had no communications at all, and that was a big problem. It's still a big problem, because if something like a big storm comes through here, which could happen, we don't know, something like that happens here, and we lose communications, and those cell towers are not properly backed up with telecommunication, or battery backups, I should say, that's a big problem. Well, a solution for that is being proposed for VoIP phones. Again, VoIP is voice over IP, which is what most telecommunications are these days. If you're talking about phone communications other than cell phones. Most of them are VoIP phones nowadays. Well, because landlines are dying, Arsenic has an article saying that VoIP providers must sell 24-hour batteries. Now, an exclusive VoIP provider is in a provider that only offers VoIP. Used to be Packet 8, and now there's Vonage, which is sort of rode the high horse of offering VoIP before much of any other company did. There used to be Packet 8. I think they only do business and enterprise now, but Vonage still gives you phone service, and they advertise it's clear as day. So I don't know why they don't just use cell phones, but anyway. As phone providers like AT&T and Verizon are seeking to phase out copper telephone networks in favor of fiber and wireless-based VoIP, which is Voice over Internet Protocol, Voice over IP services, the Federal Communications Commission must consider whether to require home phones to work during power outages. And that's kind of a problem. If your phone doesn't work during a power outage, how can you call the cops? How can you call the fire department? How can you call an ambulance? How can you call 911 without a phone? Say your phone's battery is dead because this is now day 2 of the power being out, and you have no way to call 911, even though your wife fell off the roof and broke her leg. I mean, what was she doing up there? She was trying to find a good signal. Wasn't there because the cell phone towers didn't have battery backup. She fell off the roof. They can't call 911. Well, what are you going to do? Well, the solution comes from the FCC, although I don't really approve of the FCC pushing regulation like this. I can understand where it's coming from. The Federal Communications Commission Chairman Tom Wheeler has decided that the requirement should be carriers have to offer 24-hour battery backup systems to charge these phones, but they will be able to charge customers as well for these extra expenditures. So Wheeler circulated his proposal to fellow commissioners on Friday, and will put it up for a vote on August the 6th. If it is approved in its current form, VoIP providers will have to offer 8-hour backup systems immediately and 24-hour backup systems within 3 years. The new rules would apply not just to legacy voice providers with copper networks, but to any home VoIP service, such as those offered by cable companies. Traditional copper-based landline home phones typically works during electric outages because the service providers has its own power. So again, you are getting power over that telephone line. There actually is power coming over it, which is why you can power your phone. If you have ever used a regular old phone, I mean a regular old phone that just has touchtone and that's it, no built-in voicemail, none of that nonsense. It's just a phone. That's all it does. And you plug it into a phone line and you can hear a dial tone. That's because there is actually DC voltage coming over that line. So that's why you can power a phone with just a copper phone line. And again, sometimes that'll stay up when the power goes out. It depends, but sometimes it actually will, because that's power coming from a different provider than the power company, usually. So traditional, unless you're with EVB, of course, you're kind of screwed in that point. But traditional copper-based landline home phone service typically works during electrical outages. Maintaining 911 service during long power outages is one of the main goals. There shouldn't be any technical limitations that would prevent implementation. And Verizon already sells its fiber customers a $40 battery that can power voice service, either voice over IP or traditional landline service over fiber, for up to 8 hours during an electrical outage. Now, if your power outage lasts longer than 8 hours, again, that's put you in a sticky wicket, to say the least. So if you're in that situation, it's kind of a big problem. And people, perhaps we're so spoiled that we forget how important communications are, but communications are the foundation of the modern world. They really are. Communications are absolutely foundational to everything we do in the modern world. Think about it. If I order something online, communications. If I order a pizza, communications. If I need emergency services, communications. Again, communications are the very foundation of the modern world. We would not be able to do anything which we presently do without communications such as the ones we have. Absolutely necessary to have communications like we do. So if we suddenly have no communications, then we're basically back in the Stone Age. We're back in the 1950s. Not even the 1950s. We're back in the 1800s. There's not even any telegraph systems. You can't even send a telegram to Grandma Ethel over in Arizona. Can't even do that anymore because there's no communications. So communications are absolutely vital. We don't think about it, but they are. We take it so for granted because we're so used to having them, but we kind of need them. So if they suddenly disappeared, a lot of us don't really know what to do, myself included. Like, if you ever get in a situation where there's no internet, what do? I don't know. I guess read a book. I can't read, so that's kind of a problem. I'm joking, of course. But if the internet goes out, most of us don't even know what to do. So it's a positive move, but kind of a little bit annoying that the FCC is doing it and not just the companies deciding for itself to do it. But oh well, that's just how the cookie crumbles, I suppose. Well, speaking of carriers, Comcast is offering 2 gigabit per second internet. The cost is kind of a turnoff, though. $300 a month with a $1,000 startup fee. Ouch. Now, where can you get this, you might be saying? Actually, Atlanta. Yeah. And Chattanooga and Knoxville and Nashville in our area. In fact, we are actually in the startup area. If you are in Atlanta in Georgia or you are in Chattanooga here in Tennessee, you actually can get 2 gigabit per second internet. So Comcast has revealed pricing for its 2 gigabit per second fiber to the home internet service, and yeah, it's actually really expensive. The residential service costs $299.95 per month, and fees of up to $500 for installation and up to $500 for an activation activation fee, I should say. That's what Comcast says on its website. Equipment, taxes, and fees and other applicable charges will also boost the overall cost. While $299.95 is the official monthly price, Multi-Channel News reports that the 2 gigabit per second service will carry a promotional price of only $159 per month in the early going, which is about half the general price. Internet usage on Gigabit Pro, which is the official name, will not count against data caps, Multinational News is also writing. Comcast is not offering any bundles of Gigabit Pro with its TV and phone products, but customers can purchase those separately. So it doesn't even include phone or TV. Oh well. The price of Gigabit Pro is actually lower than the $399.95 a month that Comcast had been charging for 505 megabits per second, but the company is planning to switch those customers to Gigabit Pro. Google, AT&T, and other providers, such as EPB, of course, do sell gigabit internet service for much lower prices than Comcast, although availability is limited. Google Fiber is $70 a month with no construction fees, while AT&T's gigabit service ranges from $70 to $149 a month, depending on how much competition is in your city and whether you allow AT&T to monitor your web browsing. Gigabit Pro needs a custom installation, which may require 6 to 8 weeks or more to complete, Comcast's website said. Customers are required to sign a 2-year agreement, which carries your early termination fees as well. So basically, fees is what the lesson is here. You pay a lot of money for really fast internet. Now, the funny thing about this is the evolution of communications is such that this will be laughable 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I'll look back on this and laugh. This article will be really funny to me in 10 years, and it will be to you too. Think about it. How expensive was dial-up internet back in the day? I mean, adjusted for inflation, pretty expensive actually. How expensive was 1 megabit per second internet when that came out? DSL internet when that came out? Actually really expensive when you think about it. And 2 gigabit per second internet, it seems really expensive to us now, but in a few years, that price is going to be totally laughable. And that's kind of the funny thing, is that a gigabit per second internet is going to be like peanuts. It's going to be like 1 megabit per second internet was back in the mid-90s. So it's funny to think about, but we kind of are in terms of communications. It's kind of like being back in the mid-90s again, with how we have gigabit per second internet and we treat it like it's this crazy fast new thing. And really, in 10 years, it's going to be laughable. We'll have terabit per second internet that's going to be crazy fast and really expensive too. So it's interesting to think about. Hopefully, everyone will be wired for fiber in 10 years, because I'll be very disappointed if we're stuck still with copper lines being out there. But it's interesting how the trends continue. So 2 gigabit per second internet is available for us here in Chattanooga and also in Atlanta and Nashville, Knoxville, if you want it, and if you want to spend that much money on it, which I don't know if I would recommend, honestly. A hacking team apparently broke into Bitcoin and managed to break some of the secrecy by targeting crucial wallet files, according to Ars Technica. It turns out that going after someone's Bitcoin transactions is actually much easier than you may think. After all, as the saying goes, once you're pwned, you're pwned. After hacking team, the Italian spyware vendor, was hacked earlier this month and 400 gigabytes of its internal data was released. Ars reviewed many internal emails from the company. Those documents clearly illustrate how hacking team's money module worked. and they provide a small glimpse into which customers were particularly interested in it. In general, the Italian spyware company sold and hopes to continue to sell software that allowed targets to be surreptitiously surveilled as they use computers or smartphones, and its clientele included law enforcement agencies worldwide. Back in January 2014, Hacking Team internally announced a new feature as part of its version 9.2 upgrade to its remote control system suite, and the new iteration would include a way to track cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and the related information. Now, Bitcoin, of course, is quite a powerful thing nowadays as the price has surged thanks to the situation in Greece. So anything that compromises Bitcoin could, of course, cause the price to go down pretty significantly. We're seeing that, of course, as well with the regular old currencies, soft currencies of another sort, which would be the paper dollar, which is actually not really worth much of anything. So we're seeing this trend with any currency. If there's something that makes it vulnerable, then prices are going to go down. If there's something that causes it to be stronger than another currency, prices are going to go up. For some reason, the dollar still remains strong. I don't know why. And, well, I mean, I do know why, but it's silly. And the Bitcoin is remaining stronger than the US dollar as it is right now. As it stands, the US dollar is not worth nearly as much as a Bitcoin. Bitcoin has been going between around $250 and $300 per Bitcoin, and it keeps adjusting because it's internet currency. So the dollar is worth about 200 times less than the Bitcoin is as of now, which is pretty funny, all things considered. The money module will also include support for Bitcoin alternatives, including Litecoin, Feathercoin, and Namecoin. Nicholas Weaver, who's a researcher at the International Computer Science Institute in Berkeley, California, went through the same emails, and he says that such a feature shouldn't really be surprising. It is straightforward to grab the wallet.dat and related files, and for Malcode to get the password for this file when the user accesses their Bitcoins, he told ours by email. Similarly, one can also search for Bitcoin-related keywords in email messages and other content on their computer, and once you have a copy of the wallet.dat file, you have the entire transaction history, as Ross Ulbright can attest to. Now, does this mean that Bitcoin is any less safe than, say, the U.S. banking system as it is now? Not really, actually, because you can still hack into people's bank accounts, and it's not terribly hard to do so. You can still hack into, say, somebody's wallet physically by just stealing it. I guess that might be a form of wallet. So that really means that the US dollar and any currency is insecure in some way, because there's no such thing as complete security. Now, you might see me as a bit of an apologist for the Bitcoins, the Bitcoin systems as it is now. You would be right. I don't actually own more than 50 cents worth of Bitcoin, so take from that what you will. But I'm not a huge fan of the U.S. dollar either, frankly, because I don't see it as being very secure. It's not based on anything. That's the problem, other than confidence. And if people start to lose confidence in the U.S. dollar, the whole thing kind of collapses, which I think, again, would be kind of a good thing, honestly, because we need a Phoenix-like system where the U.S. dollar collapses and everybody is it's the laughing stock of the currency world, and fiat currencies are seen as unsafe, which they are, and people start to go for hard currencies. That would be a good thing, and that's fine. It kind of has to happen because it is going to happen. That's just how it is. That happens to any economic system. It collapses eventually. And there you go. That's just how it is. If something is actually worth something based on its real value, though, that's completely different from what we have with the US dollar, where if I gave you a US dollar, that's not really worth anything other than just what you say it is or what the banking system says that it is. But if I give you, say, something tangible, that's worth what it's worth. Say firearms, for example. Firearms and ammunition are worth something tangibly because they have a use. They are worth something. They can be used for something. Whereas a dollar really can't be, other than buying other things. It's not useful for anything other than purchasing something else. And that's sort of a flimsy way to prop up an economy. And faith is, of course, eventually going to be lost in the US dollar. That's just how it is. And that's okay, because that then gives the opportunity for the local economy to survive and thrive and continue moving forward. Whereas national economy is inevitably going to collapse. And that's okay. That's kind of a good thing, actually, because once it does, people will sort of wake up to the fact that the national system as it is now and the international system as it is now is extremely flimsy, and it's really only it's really only profiting the bigwigs and not so much the little guy. Not that bigwigs making money is a bad thing inherently. It's just that if a system is set up to inherently favor the bigwigs, that's kind of a problem, isn't it? So it's a little bit of it's a bit of a conundrum that we're in right now. Eventually, again, the whole thing is going to collapse, and that's okay. It's just inevitable. I can't tell you when because nobody can. It's unpredictable, but things are not looking so good right now. Put it that way. Things are definitely not looking very good right now in terms of national economy. But something that is good is competition. We like competition, right? Without competition, there wouldn't be any sales. I mean, sales as in special deals. Without competition, there wouldn't be anything like, there wouldn't be anything like competition as in this gas station is lower prices than this gas station. Caller, you're on the air. This is Hot News Talk Radio. What's going on?
I love your analysis. Can I share something with you?
Of course.
And why you're so right.
Okay.
Can you own something if you don't pay for it?
Well, you could generate it, I suppose, but I'm not sure.
But can you actually own something you don't pay for?
If it's a gift, possibly. But I'm not sure what you're going for here.
I'm talking about in the marketplace as an exchange. Can you own something you didn't pay for?
No, I wouldn't say so. No.
No, you can. It looks like you own it. You can have an equitable interest in it.
Sure.
And here's the inherent problem with paper currency, is that at one time it promised redemption in something of value. That's what gave the paper its value. That $1 is a unit of measurement. It's 371 1/4 grains of fine silver. It's not a thing. It's a weight.
It was representative.
So at one time you were able to take your paper and redeem or buy back your quantity of silver dollars. So if you gave me something and I gave you a piece of paper, you haven't been paid until you go to a bank and redeem it or buy back the particular quantity of silver. Now the payment's complete. The problem we've had since 1968 is it is impossible to own anything because one can't pay for it. It looks like ownership, but actually it's just an equitable interest in it. Hence, this is why individuals pay property tax. I was having a discussion with somebody about that yesterday, is that you, by contract, agree to pay property taxes because it's really not property. It's equity.
Right.
It's not private property. Private property denotes you paid for it. And to pay for it, the debt must be extinguished. You can't have a piece of paper floating around or numbers in the books of banks that claim that you own something when you don't. You have an interest in it. You think you own it. I own my house. No, you don't. You don't own your house. You don't have an allodial title. So what you're saying is exactly correct. And history will show for 6,000 years that paper money will continue to fail because its basis is quicksand.
Its basis is convenience. Think about it. Convenience is really what's the death of us because we think, oh, it's so much more convenient to have this paper as opposed to silver coinage. And that's what was the death of us. It was convenience.
Well, there's nothing inherently wrong with carrying around something that promises to pay something.
So long as it actually pays that.
but ultimately, if there are numbers on computers, they have to be backed by something that's tangible, or there can never be a full exchange of debt.
And really, this
because debt is defined as the undelivered portion of an exchange.
Right.
So if I give you a piece of paper that promises redemption in something, or notes, or just numbers on a computer that promises redemption, it's still the undelivered portion of an exchange in a debt.
It really is.
Until the exchange is fulfilled, the debt exists. So with paper currency, it's perpetual indebtedness. And remember, the debtor is a slave to the loaner. So one can still use paper currency as long as it promises redemption. And here's the big thing. You ready for this?
Ready. Got to be quick.
Doesn't have the quality of legal tender. Because when you deem something to be legal tender, what you're saying is that you are compelled to accept that unit is when a transaction took place in lieu of anything else you contract for regarding dollars.
Okay, we're going to have to end on that, but thank you for your call.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am?
Arnie Guest Goldsmith, Chattanooga's gold standard in quality, selection, and beautifully handcrafted jewelry. Arnie Guest Goldsmith has 7 jewelers on site and ready to assist you in the design of your one-of-a-kind diamond piece. Arnie Guest Goldsmith, Chattanooga's gold standard in quality, selection, and beautifully handcrafted jewelry. Arnie Guest Goldsmith has 7 jewelers on site and ready to assist you in the design of your one-of-a-kind diamond piece to the perfect affordable handcrafted gem. From just $20 silver earrings to your dream elegant work of art to adorn your finger, neck,